Hey there, I'm Amy Connell. Welcome to Graced Health, the podcast for women who want simple and grace-filled ways to take care of themselves and enjoy a little chocolate. I'm a certified personal trainer and nutrition coach who wants you to know your eating, movement, and body don't have to be perfect. You just need to be able to do what you're called to do. I am joined today by Sonya Joy Mack. She is the CEO and lead life coach of the Live Joy Life, an organization that empowers busy mom professionals to banish the busy and mental clutter and live the something bigger God created them for. Her debut book, This Changes Everything, is based on Sonya's own something bigger story of hope and healing through the grief of her mother's passion and inspires readers to follow their God-given dreams. Sonya lives in Des Moines, Iowa with her husband and two spunky daughters, where she continues to bring joy to busy mamas everywhere. Welcome, Sonya.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's very, very exciting to be on this show with you.
I'm thrilled that you're here, and I would love to hear what ages your spunky daughters are.
Yes, they're 10, so we have a tween, and then 7. And yes, with every year comes more spunk. I think more spunk and more sass, right? I don't know how many of you out there have raised daughters, but that's what I'm finding out.
I was just listening to a podcast this morning with Lisa Damore, and I don't know if you know about her work, but she does a lot of research into teenage girls. And I tell you, she does amazing work. And I used some of her research into my new book for young women. And anyway, it is not easy raising girls. I have two boys, and I think I got the better end of the deal. I'm just saying.
Yes, there's a lot more emotion with girls, I think, than there are with boys. But I don't know any different, so this is this is what we're doing, and this is what we're in for. So,
I
but
know, but there's a wonderful things about them as well.
yes,
They'll communicate more, whether
yes,
or not this
yes,
is a good thing. I
yes.
think they learn to use their words more. So there are
Mhm.
absolutely wonderful, wonderful qualities of young
Yes,
women.
yes. And they are definitely, they're both kind of mama's girls right now. So I like that
Good.
secretly.
Yes.
And yeah,
Yes.
so
I would love to start out by you sharing with us a bit about your journey and what inspired you to start Live Joy Life.
sure. The bulk of my story really starts in 2010. My mom passed away from ALS when I was 29. And as you might expect, there's a lot of grief that went along with that. And I really dug in. I've always been a writer, and I really dug into my writing in that period of time. And what I really focused on with God was, how do I find my joy? My mom had always said, I named you Sonya Joy Mack because you were meant to spread joy to the world. And I was like, how do I find joy without this person who was my main cheerleader? And as I was writing through that grief, God kind of gave me this download of what would become the Live Joy Life and these 12 principles and the ACE framework. But, it really wouldn't develop until years later, after I'd gone through a few more kind of really hard pain, suffering kind of moments. And once I really figured out what that Live Joy Life was, what all of that information that God was giving me was for, and how much it had changed my own life, I knew that I was like, oh, this is something I have to share with other women. And so I was like, what's the best way I can do that? And that was really, life coaching kept coming to me. And so I got my life coaching certificate on the side. I'm a PA by day, or a physician assistant by day. So I did all of this in weekend evening hours, and I got my life coaching certificate. And so I do that also now too. I'm a life coach to busy moms. And what we do is we really just work through some of that Live Joy Life framework. But it really went from grief or pain, knowing that God gives us a purpose for it, and how can I bring that forward to other people. So that's really how it all progressed.
May I ask your mom's name?
Yeah, Vicky.
Vicky. Vicky,
Yeah,
thank you for sharing that.
yeah.
The other thing too, I mean, you mentioned that she passed from ALS.
Hmm.
So I have to imagine that was a very long, hard journey from that. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't know. how long that was, but it's not like you unexpectedly lost her at age
Right.
29.
It was a 5-year journey. So I was actually in PA school. Well, I was actually studying for MCATs. I was thinking about going to medical school when my mom got diagnosed. And so then I really changed paths and became a physician assistant because I knew that I could kind of get through school a little bit quicker and also still get that medical degree that I wanted. And it ended up being a really great, God always God always knows what's better, right? Ended up being a really great transition for me. But yeah, it was actually during that 5-year period of time that God gave me this really very distinct words of something bigger, something different. And I wouldn't know what that was until the Live Joy Life really came to be. And so it was probably a period of 7 or 8 years of, okay, what is this something bigger, something different? Am I something bigger? I know you are, and it really, I really figured out over those years that it was this grief went for something bigger, something different. So if I can put that in place with God and the things that He gave me and bring it forward to other people, our pain really does have a purpose.
And it's so hard. That's just a hard reality when you're walking through it, and when you're
Yes.
walking through the pain. And having that perspective is good, in addition to acknowledging the pain, that
Right.
it is hard, and not just brushing that aside, but just kind of holding both of those at the same time.
Yeah. And I would be the first to tell you that I didn't always do that well. That sometimes I would look up and be like, what are you doing? Why is all of this happening? Because, I didn't have children until after my mom passed. And so my first daughter went to the NICU with some infection issues. And then my second daughter almost died when she was born. She had to have major surgery when she was 4 days old to remove part of her lung. And so she's still doing really well. But, through all of it, it's hard because when you're in the midst of that pain, it's hard to trust that. And I'm human just like everyone else. So sometimes I'm not the best at it either. But I think that's where your faith just, eventually it rules over and you're like, okay, I know we talked earlier in the pre-show about favorite Bible verses. This feels like a great way to sum up how all this came about. But my favorite verse was always Romans 8:28, which is all things work together for the good of those who love God. And I'm like, okay, not all things are going to be good, but all things are going to work together for good. So a lot of times I've found that asking the question, what, not why, is more helpful. Instead of, God, why did this happen to me? God, what do you want me to do with it? Which isn't always an easy question to answer either, but it gives a lot more of that purpose that we're talking about.
Yeah, and I think it also is that releasing that, like,
Yes.
okay, I'm not. And it kind of reminds me of when the angel appeared to Mary.
Yes.
It was like, how can this be? I think it was her response, not why. And it
Right.
wasn't, it was saying, essentially, she was saying, I trust you. I don't really know how you're going to make that happen, but
Yeah.
I'm trusting you in it. And
Yeah.
so I
Yes.
think that kind of reminds me of that, like, what? So what are you trying to teach me? What's going to happen? What are you doing to
Mm-hmm.
make good of this?
Mm-hmm.
Not rather than the why. I
Rather
love
than
that.
wondering. Yeah.
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 So you mentioned being a physician assistant.
Yep.
And first of all, I don't know how you do all of that together. And I will say this too: the physician assistants I know are so incredible and such a value add to the physicians they support. And it's like, that's where you really get a lot of one-on-one time and
Mm-hmm.
attention. And so I just thank you for your work in that role,
Yeah.
because I have always felt very cared for by physician assistants. And I've had Jenna Unke on. Gosh, I'll put the link in the show notes. That was a while ago. And she's incredible. She does gynecological cancer at MD Anderson. So I think that's when you get a physician assistant and you're like, it's your lucky day.
Thank
So
you.
thank you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I do especially love the moments when I get to kind of be one on one with the patients and kind of it, for some reason, I don't know why, a lot of us are a little better at explaining things in a way that they can understand. But yeah, I thank you. I really appreciate that. Really the only way I can do all of this is because I have an incredibly supportive husband and I time block.
Oh, we need to talk more about that because that's
Yes,
something I have been playing around with. Yeah.
yes, yep,
Um, so let's pull in your personal experience. Let's pull in your professional experience. And I would love to hear before we kind of get into sort of, I want to talk some about mental and emotional
yeah,
clutter today. But
absolutely.
how do you pull all of this in? And I guess I would say, like, what's your either personal approach or your encouraged approach to holistic health, holistic well
Mhm.
being? Because you have a lot of wisdom and areas that you are learning and growing in. And I would just love to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So it became pretty obvious to me very early in my career that, you know, Western medicine, I love learning about the body. I knew that I wanted to learn about, be in medicine somehow, but we're really good at treating the physical, but we're not always as great at treating the emotional and the spiritual, and the psychological sometimes even. And so I realized really early on in my career, I started my career in family practice urgent care and then moved and transitioned actually into plastic surgery, which we do a lot of breast cancer reconstruction. So, especially in these breast cancer women, they're getting so much information all at once. And I would be the one, part of the reconstructive process is often a tissue expander. And so I would be the one filling them every week. And so I would have this 15-minute period of time every week where I would have them sitting there, they could talk to me, and it just became really easy for me to ask kind of how the rest of things were going. And I realized as I started kind of reaching into that part and not just treating the cancer but treating the whole person, that they'd come back next week and say things like, oh, you don't know how much our conversation meant to me. Or I would get cards that would say, oh, I didn't realize I had this also going on. And then I actually was diagnosed with my own chronic illness just about a year ago, and I realized again, like, the importance of treating the physical, the emotional, and the spiritual. Like, we are all connected holistically. So where I work right now in a big hospital setting with the surgeon I work with, there's actually a really great integrative medicine program specifically for cancer patients, but they add in acupuncture, massage therapy, chiropractic, mindfulness. They add in all of this. And so I'm a really big proponent of getting a lot of these women in to see this integrative medicine clinic. And then also, I practice what I preach. So for my own self with this, like I said, chronic illness that I have, I've used EFT tapping, I've used mindfulness. And so I think the biggest thing is just being in the position that I'm in, not being afraid to mention that to these women, because I work mostly with women. I do see men, but just as you might imagine with plastic surgery and breast reconstruction and things,
Yeah.
I work a lot with women. But it's also helped me too when they've been really anxious about a procedure or something we might be doing. I'll sit and breathe with them, or we'll talk through stuff before things are happening, and then that just really helps a lot. So that's been really just kind of an incredible part to see my own practice and evolve over time to be able to add in some of that holistic approach.
It's probably one of the first times people have been offered that in a medical setting. And it might be something new that they haven't considered. It's a novel idea that, oh,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm anxious about this, I can actually embody that and get into my breathing and, kind of take that in and consider
Mm-hmm.
it holistically rather than, well, we're just going in there to, you know, whatever the procedure is. I
Yes. Yep.
love that you do that.
Yes.
And what a gift too, because that's something that can translate outside of the clinician setting.
Yes, for sure. Absolutely. And something that, again, when people reach out to me, because when you're in medicine, you get people to reach out to you a lot about different things. And so a lot of times I will bring that back up to them too, which is what I love so much about your podcast too, is that, you're taking, exercise, like be wellness, right? I hate the word exercise. I usually call it movement just because, exercise seems like such a dirty word, but it's not. But I usually call it movement. And then just what we're putting into our bodies, just doing it in such a way that it doesn't feel like it's something that you're pressured to do, but more something that's almost like a gift to your body. And that's what I love so much about what you're doing too. So it's always fun for me to meet other people who are really promoting that, because I know there's a great book. I've heard about it and I've heard parts of it, but I haven't read it yet, called The Body Keeps Score.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all about, how our bodies keep score, and all of these anxious, traumatic moments will actually, they create that effect in our body and they keep score.
I have read most of that book. It is a heavy read in terms of like it's a lot. With your medical background, you might be able to get through it a little bit
Sure.
easier, but
Yeah.
it's very powerful, and I actually quoted it a lot in my book as well, because
Oh,
that
nice.
is it truly does, and it gives you a completely different perspective in health in general, and how trauma affects our health, and how it
Yes.
manifests in the body. So yeah, I would say definitely when you're ready for like heavy learning,
Yes.
check that one out.
I know we can
Yeah.
start with yours, and if you want to dig deeper, then go to that one.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, mine's a little bit broader in scope, but his work is very powerful and
Yeah.
is a baseline for a lot of conversations about how trauma affects our body and
Yes.
all of that. So yeah,
Yeah.
it is. It's a really good one. One of the things you talk about is ditching the mental clutter. And
Hmm.
I want to talk about this because I don't even know what you mean by mental clutter, but what I mean by mental clutter is
Hmm.
just the nonsense going through my head, the I shoulds, the I need to,
Hmm.
in my new book, I call it the inner mean girl, like
Hmm.
just all of that kind of stuff. So, and you talk about ditching that and living into something bigger that God created us for. So, can
Hmm.
you tell us more about that? Because I think a lot of us have this type of mental clutter.
Right. Yeah. So a lot of times when I explain it to people, mental clutter to me means something very similar to you. Basically, just, if we believe in God, there's an opposite force, right? And that enemy attacks most women through busy, by just constantly, I say, pick, 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 pick. He just throws things in at us. And so then we have so many things going on in our minds. Like you said, the shoulds, the I forgot to's, the what I need to do, the where my kids are going, who needs an appointment, just all of the things. And then also the things that we're dealing with internally, what's making us anxious, what's making us not feel well, all those things. And so that is what I explain about is mental clutter. And how I talk about ditching that basically is, for me, that's where the Live Joy Life really came into place. So there's what I call this ACE framework, and it's assess, contemplate, execute. Assess is taking, and I do this once a week. I take a list of all the things that are going through my mind, because there's something about writing it down that also makes it less like, it's not just these words and things that are just continuing to swirl through your head, but something about writing it down makes it more concrete. Assessing it is going through all of the different parts of each. So maybe I'm worried about my kid for some reason, and then I've got something with my house or my husband, or for me, I've got the business and the kids, and we're remodeling our whole house, and like all these things, right? So then the contemplate is the part of bringing it to God with these specific Live Joy Life principles. And what that does is it gives us an anchor to for all of this worry, right? So we have all this worry, and when we bring it back to God and we anchor it with these principles. So for instance, just one this morning, I was thinking about something business related, and one of my principles was, so the main one's faith, hope, and love, right? And so I was like, faith, okay, I need faith is the one that stuck out to me. And so I know that the faith is what I need to work on. And what does that look like for me? And that's something I usually work through with my coaching clients, but is also something that you can do on your own. And then there's a bunch of supporting principles. And for me, inspiration, which is hearing God's word. So really that tells me I need to focus more in prayer time and writing and what God's asking me to do. And then fortitude, which is, still just feeling like I can go forward and move forward. So basically, these principles with the contemplate bring it back to God and give us this anchor to go off of. And then we have a plan. So we have an executable plan. So now instead of all this worry about this thing was worried about with my job, whenever that comes up in my head, I can say, okay, faith, inspiration, fortitude. Which one of these do I need to work on? And then I have this executable plan. So then instead of worrying about it, I have something I can do about it. And it's something that God brought with, was part of also. Because I think sometimes so much of what we worry about is maybe not something that God is telling us we should worry about. It's something that we really don't even have control over some of it. And so the easiest way I explain that to people of how the Live Joy life works is it's the difference between a mom going to the grocery store with 2 kids, no list, no meal plan, just knowing that she needs groceries, right? Like she's just needs food in her house, but I don't know, we're just going to go to the grocery store, throwing things in the cart, forgetting things. The kids are yelling, they want to throw stuff in. That's what mental clutter feels like. Like, I think most of us can put a visual to that.
Oh, yes.
Right? I think, yes. And whereas, after I've worked through all of that with the Live Joy life, it's like going to the grocery store with a list, a meal plan, and probably by myself even, and I go to the aisles, I get what I need, I go to the checkout, I feel much more relaxed. And so there's something about having the anchor and then the executable plan that makes us feel the difference between those two. And so that's usually how I explain kind of ditching the mental clutter. So it's always going to be there, but it's more organizing it in a way that it feels doable, and then learning to let go of the things that maybe aren't ours to even worry about.
That's a great analogy. And I think that we can all relate to, showing up at the grocery store with 2 kids and no plan. Yeah.
No plan, just knowing you need food.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned the Live Joy Life principles. I want to make sure that I got them. Is it just the 3, the faith, inspiration, and fortitude?
So there's actually 12 of them, and I can
Okay.
definitely I'll send you a link where people can click on them, and because I might have forgot to put that in the notes, where people can click on it, and it even gives, they're very self-explanatory. They're things like faith, hope, love, laughter, gratitude, generosity. But basically what I found over time as God presented these to me are in every situation that I'm going through, the reason why I'm worried or anxious is because I'm missing one of these. I'm either missing like my faith component, or I'm missing the gratitude component, or I'm missing the forgiveness component or something. And so that's why, he said faith, hope, and love are the greatest. So that's why one of those 3 is going to be at the top. And then there's usually 1 or 2 supporting principles that we're missing out on. And so I can definitely send you that link for anyone who wants it in the show notes, where they can just click on it and it shows all 12 principles and kind of just gives a brief explanation.
Yes, that would be great. I think I'm looking here. You may have given that to me, but go ahead and send that to me,
Yeah,
and
I will.
we'll definitely include that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's helpful. We always love the downloads and kind of the concrete stuff. So
Yes.
that is
Yes.
fantastic.
Absolutely.
So you talk about this clutter and the mental clutter and kind of getting it organized and making sure that we've got a smooth trip to the grocery store.
Yes.
Sometimes it's hard to keep doing that. We'll do it once or twice and it's like, okay, this works, but it's hard to be ongoing and to make these lasting change. So,
Yes.
how can we maintain that sense of joy and clarity after we get organized and clear that clutter
Yeah.
one time?
Absolutely. Yep. So there's something I talk about a lot is, 1, having a mentor, whether that's a coach, a spiritual director, someone who you feel like you can kind of guide you through something like this. Whatever it is, like, you would be a great mentor, obviously, for someone's health related stuff as well. And I consider myself a mentor when I'm at work, when someone's going through that. So having a mentor to go through it with you, and equally along with that is a community or a network. Some women, somebody who is going to support you on the journey, remind you, someone to do it with you. Sometimes so like anyone who signs up for, like, when they do my coaching, I put them in a private Facebook group. And so then everyone in there has gone through the program and they can kind of help each other. So when they have something going on, they've got this network. So mentor, network, and then practice, right?
Yeah.
practicing, just doing it over and over and over again. I learned a really great trick the other day. It's super simple and most people have heard it before, I think, but wearing a rubber band or a hair tie around your wrist all the time. And when you start to find yourself kind of catastrophizing or worrying, and you flick the wrist, right? Flick the rubber band or the hair tie. And so that's what I've started using myself too. So when I start to realize that, oh, okay, I'm starting to get all cluttered up here again, I flick the rubber band or the hair tie. That reminds me, okay, what are my principles? And I can go back to them. But a lot of it, as you know, is just consistency, practice. But then I really think there's something about having that community, people who support you, and then a mentor, someone who can coach you or teach you or help you.
Those are all great. I agree with all of them. And,
Yeah.
you talk about the community. I just keep seeing, and maybe it's because my news feed knows that I like learning about this, but
Yeah.
just article after article after article that talks about the power of community, how important it is to have quality relationships. It doesn't matter where you are in your life, but that is so important. And I think it's really nice when you have people who are walking through, in this somewhat in the same space. No one's ever going to have the exact same
Right.
story as you because, we're all unique. But I do
Mhm.
like that. And then, your little rubber band thing. I mean, to me, it's kind of like a reset, right? Like,
Yeah.
okay, nope,
Yep.
let's go back. Let's go back to what we know.
Hmm.
And then also I like how you talk about just kind of getting the reps in and the more we do it, because anytime we do something new, it is different. It's hard. We
Yeah.
don't have that muscle memory,
Right.
whether it's physical or mental or emotional, but the more we do it, the better we are at it.
Yeah. And the more it becomes second nature, and then the more it's any habit, right? Any habit you want to start takes 30 to 60 days, depending on who you listen to or which researcher you're reading about. And it's the same for anything. But I think putting those pieces in place so that you have support and you have, backup and someone maybe doing it with you is really helpful.
Yes, and someone in your corner. And
Hmm.
boy, the power of a mentor as well,
Hmm.
and the power of as leaning into someone and saying, I just need a little bit of guidance. I know I have
Yes.
used a couple different people recently to help me with some projects because I'm like,
Hmm.
more than I do. And it's
Yes.
really nice to have someone in your corner cheering you on, holding you accountable if that's something that you need,
Yes.
and just imparting that wisdom for
Yeah,
sure.
even I tell people, even I have a spiritual director and two coaches. So, I mean, even coaches have coaches, and even doctors or physicians assistant have doctors and physicians assistants that they go to. So, I mean, everybody needs somebody, no matter what level you're at. It's just finding someone who's just like steps ahead of you and has gone through things similar and can kind of coach you or guide you, like you said. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Tell us some about your book. It's called
Sure.
This Changes Everything When Death No Longer Has the Final Say. And if I remember correctly, it is part of the journey that you
Mhm.
learned when going through grief when your mom Vicky passed.
Yeah, thank you for asking about that. So, yes, after my mom passed, so I mentioned earlier that my mom passed before I had kids, and she was my best friend by far, and always the one that encouraged and supported me. And so the book started actually just as me being like, after I had a couple kids, how can I like bring my mom into what is here that I wanted her to share with me so much for. And we'd always talk about going on trips and things like that. But as I was writing it for myself, basically, and also just to give my girls this story, this recollection of what Grandma Vicky was like, I realized that I was getting so many, I always call them downloads from God, but when I'm writing and it's just like someone else is using the pen and not me, or the keys are just going and someone else is writing, I realized that the book was so much more than just for me, even though it is a Christian nonfiction. So it's a deeply personal story, but I realized that I needed to share it. And so it really became this story of, helping anyone who's lost someone recognize how powerful our memories are to bring them forward and keep them a part of our lives. My daughters talk about missing Grandma Vicky. They've never met her because we talk about her so much and what she would do. And like sometimes at nighttime, when my kids are having trouble sleeping, we'll get rid of all the bad feelings and we'll give them to Grandma Vicky up in heaven, it's just things like that. But then it also became a story of like following your dreams, because in there I tell my mom, like my dreams and that I never got to tell her about, and she supports me and encourages me, and even though technically she's passed. So yeah, I'm just really proud of it, not because of anything that I necessarily did, but because of what God really turned it into. And what I've gotten responses back from people who have read it. I actually had a patient come to me who read it, and she was getting kind of teary eyed. And I said, "Did you have someone pass recently?" And she said, "No, but I've kind of fallen away from the church and God, and your book really made me like want to start getting back into it." And I was like, yes, so it's just one of those things where, not even what I thought it was intended for, but just another way of showing like God has a purpose for our pain. Had I not gone through all of that with my mom, the book wouldn't be here and it wouldn't be helping people the way that it is.
Oh my goodness. I was getting a little teary eyed you telling that. I mean, I
Oh,
just think how
thanks.
healing that is.
Mm-hmm.
I I had a friend tell me this one time about a book, and I wish I could quote, I wish I could give credit to the author, but they were basically saying how just because someone passes, that doesn't mean that your relationship has to end there, and how we can continue the relationship and grow it in different ways. And I love
Yeah,
that you are doing that with Grandma Vicky, with your
yeah,
girls, so they're getting to know her in a different way, but still they're getting to know her as they are growing up.
yeah.
And that's just so special. And I have to imagine that it's been very healing to you to keep her alive and to keep her name active,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
as you raise your daughters as
Yes,
well.
very much so. Very much so. We talk about her. I mean, we celebrate her birthday still. At Christmas time, what would Grandma have done? Like, it's just been really great. And it is, it's so healing. Of course, it's not the same. We all know that. But also, it just really is so, so healing and such a powerful way of keeping these loved ones that we've lost with us, and keeping their memories alive. My mom was such an amazing person that I love that people are getting to know her personality too. People who would have never otherwise met her, they're getting to know her and learning to love her the way that I did. So that's also very, very cool.
Oh, that is wonderful. That's gorgeous. Tell us some about your Live Joy Life program. Who is it for? If and what they would get with working with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I really work the most with moms who are busy, working moms, people that, because not that everybody else doesn't have clutter, but those are the one mental clutter, but those are the ones I understand the most because I am one. And what it is, there's every once in a while I do some group coaching or there's one-on-one coaching. And what we really do is we focus so much on that ACE framework we went through. And we work through all of these different mental clutter topics. What is the assessment? What are we contemplating? What is God telling us about this? And how do we execute it? But as a life coach, you do that from a way that it really comes from the person. So it's not me just telling you what to do. It's
Right.
me asking the right questions to get you to answer the question really that you weren't sure you were even answering. With that, we also, like I mentioned, we have that community on the Facebook page, and we record everything so people can go back to it and use it. I also teach time blocking as one of the sessions because we mentioned earlier, with all the things I have, being a physician assistant, a mom, an entrepreneur, an author, and remodeling this whole house, I wouldn't know what to do if I didn't block my time off. That's the only way I can figure out exactly, what I want to do, what I need to do. And certain, we even block off family times and we block off everything really. And so we teach a whole time blocking session in there, which really helps kind of with these women who are so busy gain control of their schedule, feel like they can get some time back. And yeah, so it's just about providing that plan, providing that mentorship, and really helping them go from just feeling anxious and busy and worried to feeling like they have this plan, like I said, this anchor that they can go back to be able to go forward and feel more confident, empowered, and then ultimately just live in that joy that God intended.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and saving time too.
Yes,
You go to the grocery store with your list and you're going to save time.
yes, absolutely.
Very
Absolutely.
good.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, I have a few questions that I ask all my guests. And by the way, we will put all of those links in the show notes. So if you're interested in that, if you're grabbing the book or joining the program, go to the show notes and get that. But I love learning about tattoos because I have found that people who put tattoos on their body for the rest of their life often have a meaning
Mhm.
behind it. So I was wondering if you have one, if you would be willing to share what it is and the meaning
Mhm.
behind it. And if you don't have one, but you had to get one, what would it be and where would it go?
Absolutely. Actually, so I don't have one yet, but I have two that I would like that I keep floating around. One are my mom's initials in a very scriptic kind of scrolling with a butterfly because that's why I wear this butterfly with her initial on it. It's very that's how I remember her. That's how when we see butterflies out and about, we remember her. We think, oh yeah, what would Grandma Vicky do right now, or what would she be adding? Or my kids will be like, "Hi, Grandma Vicky," when they see a butterfly, which I love. And the other one is another one of my favorite verses, and I would probably put them. I would probably put them on my forearms just so that I could see them too and be reminded of them. But the other one is "Be still and know that I am God,"
Psalm
because
46:10, I
yep,
think.
Psalm
Yep.
46:10. Yep. And so either be still and know or be still and know that that's why I haven't gotten it yet because I can't decide how much of it I want, but be still and know I think is what I want. But just because what great advice for a busy mom, right? What great advice that and the all things work together are my two favorite, but what great advice when we're busy and overwhelmed and anxious and worried to be able to just look at your arm and think, just be still
Be
and know.
still.
Yep.
So simple. A little
Yes.
harder to implement sometimes,
Always
but
harder to
always,
implement. Yep.
yes, but always worth it. Always
Yes.
worth it. So
Yep.
I typically ask for a meaningful Bible verse, but you shared both of those with us,
Yep.
the Ephesians 8:28 and then Psalm 46:10. So
Yep.
thanks for that. Tell people, we'll put this in the show notes as well, but tell people how they can connect with you. And then I've got one final question.
Yeah, absolutely. So probably the easiest way is through my website, which is sonyajoymack.com. So SONYAJOYMACK. And then, I'm pretty active on Facebook and Instagram. So those are other ways where I share a lot about the Live Joy Life, the ACE method, and just really sometimes laughs. Sometimes it's a meme about a mom feeling like she's drowning or something and what we can do to help with that. So those are probably the two best ways to stay connected with me. Thank
Fantastic.
you.
Okay, so what is the one final simple thing that you would like us to remember about the conversation? It can be big or small, but just one thing to not forget.
I would say really find a mentor. Whatever it is that you're going through, there's someone out there who can help you through it. And I think so often, especially as busy moms, and if we're type A like I am, you think you can do it all yourself. But the truth is that God created all of us to be helping somebody, right? To use our gifts like we talked about in the pre-show, really. And so finding a mentor, somebody who can help you through what you're going through, whether that be, like I said, someone at your church, spiritual director, a coach, therapist, somebody, some kind of a mentor, just to help you through.
So true. Okay, that is all for today. Go out there and have a graced day.